while I was away, I saw a tweet on X. Yeah, I saw an X. Maybe we should be calling them X. And Dr. Catherine Chobutunji was lamenting. She said that I was 14 years old when this man took power. I am now freaking 53 years old. That is exactly what she said. I've just quoted her tweet. I was 14 years old when Museveni took power. And now I am freaking 53 years old. Let that sink in. You might have noticed that I haven't been posting as frequently as I wanted to. I was upgrading my equipment because I know that we are now getting into the serious business of election activity. I mean, we are getting into the serious business. You might have already known or realized, everyone knows it's no longer a secret that Yoweri Museveni is going to be standing for president, which means that will be his 7th term in office. Uganda's worst fear, because of course, with everything that happens in the lead up to elections, you cannot expect free and fair elections. Let's just put that on one side. Of course, the reaction to Dr. Catherine Chobutunji's tweet was going to be mixed, but mostly when it comes to the NRM apologies, there is always this reoccurring theme that Yoweri Museveni is the wisest, is the best we can get. It almost feels like Uganda equals to Museveni and vice versa. So many people have come out. I remember, I think it was the former vice president, Gilbert Bukenya, who said that Museveni is the only man that has a vision for Uganda. He famously said that, which begs the question, is there any individual out there that is bigger than an entire country? One who supersedes what any nation should be? Is there anybody out there? I'd like you to answer that question. In today's video, I would like to explore what it means to overstay in power. Could it have been a big problem if Museveni, for example, decided that I am going to make it clear to everyone that I'm not just gonna go out of office? Would it have been better for him to do that? Or would it even have been extremely beneficial to Ugandans if only Yoweri Museveni mirrored the vision of Singapore? Lee Kuan Yew, the man who is famed for his strong grip on power, with such intentions that are currently bearing fruit for that country. So of course, when it came to the reactions from the NRM apologists to Dr. Chobutunji's tweet, there's one that really stood out. This lady, Akelo, she shared pictures of some of them were really artistic impression of what has been promised by the NRM government, and a mixture of artistic impressions and roads that have been paved in certain random areas in the country. And her counter argument was, aren't you witnessing what we are achieving under Yoweri Museveni? Are you so blinded to the point that you cannot acknowledge that without Yoweri Museveni, you would not have been able to make this kind of progress? And Dr. Catherine Chobutunji was very quick with sarcasm. If roads are the best thing to justify the time Yoweri Museveni has stayed in power, then I don't know what else to say. While other countries are speaking of speed trains and out of this world innovations, you are really going to convince me that this is progress. The pictures of paved roads. Yeah, that was her counter. That is how she got back to her. But the thing is, for me, my thing, it caused me to realize one thing. First of all, I started reflecting on my life. I started reflecting And the time that Yoweri Kaguta Museveni came to power, I was 5 years, I think. I was 5, maybe 6 years. I am now 44. I was 5. So I was beginning to realize that this dude has been in power throughout my childhood and my youthful days, because right now at my age, I am easily becoming a senior citizen of my country, because you see, in my country, Uganda, more than half, up to 70% of the population is below 35 years. Almost 70% or even more is below 35 years. This means that while I was looking into the future and hearing all these old speeches from leaders, always continuously telling us that we are the leaders of tomorrow, a tomorrow that never seems to come because of how strong a grip they have on power. And across the board, you have seen the likes of Moses Ali picking up forms at 84 years. They can barely walk. These men and women, the Kadagas of this world, can barely walk. They're supposed to be somewhere in their vacation homes and writing memoirs and giving counsel to the new generation of Uganda's leaders. And yet here we are. So all these speeches in promises that we are the leaders of tomorrow really were lies. They were really lies. I went to the same school as Museveni's kids. I remember quite vividly during my time at Kampala Parent School, when Museveni's kids were brought into the school, and Mohozi, I think, was about to finish his primary school. He was in P7. There was something about how Museveni's kids were treated then. I'm only using this in symbolic terms because this is quite a lesson on how the leadership of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, or the dictatorship of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has evolved over the years. But there are so many things that have remained consistent, because you see, during lunchtime, all these, the security detail of the president would come in with food and they would take Museveni's kids, they would eat their food inside the cars. You would notice that, okay, these presidential cars were in the compound and these kids were having lunch. Which reminds me of so many people who will go at every length in defending Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's leadership. They almost make you feel that they are part of this family. Unlike us who were on the sidelines watching Museveni's kids having lunch in those cars. They are not very different. They might think that because they're in proximity to the president, therefore they can also have the audacity of wielding the same power. They speak with that arrogance in defending Museveni, almost making you feel like, oh yeah. Because you see, when I was coming back and forth from school, just being a student at Kampala Parent School, many people thought that, oh my goodness, this guy goes to the same school as the president's kids. So you are always treated in such a way as though you are part of the president's family. But no, the important detail of, like, much as we share the same school campus, there is something so distinct and different when it comes to how you are going to be treated. That does not mean because you are in proximity to the president, you also wield the same power and that you access the same privileges. Because when it comes, history will teach you that Museveni has used so many brilliant minds and thrown them at the sidelines. Because I see all this energy of people, the Majamberes of this world, proclaiming themselves as the kings of Kampala, and that opposition can never thrive or will never have any audacity campaigning in the middle of Kampala city, despite the fact that the constitution allows for the opposition to have as much access when it comes to competing for the top office or all these leadership positions in the country, and that there is no one that should supersede what is stated in the constitution, that power belongs to the people. So being in proximity does not mean that you are really part of the club and that you are to wield the same power that the president wields. So when I stated that, what if Yoweri Kaguta Museveni decided to stay in power and mirror the legacy of Lee Kuan Yew? This is exactly what I am imagining. Because when we talk about Lee Kuan Yew and his leadership in Singapore, these are the lessons that you can take from his leadership. The key leadership lessons of Lee Kuan Yew is visionary planning, pragmatism and adaptability, strong leadership, economic development, and social cohesion. I think I should do a part 2 about exploring how Museveni overstaying in power could have been to the benefit of Ugandans. Unfortunately, that ship seems to have sailed by now. But let's just really learn together in this video. Because when we talk about somebody who has visionary planning, Lee Kuan Yew's long-term vision for Singapore's development transformed the country into a thriving economy and stable society. He prioritized education, economic growth, and social policies to achieve his vision. So this thing, it's not that Museveni did not have a blueprint of where he wanted to take Uganda to. His 7-point program was a marvel, and many people were optimistic about the outcome just by implementing the 7-point program and bringing forth fundamental change to Uganda. If only he looked into the characteristics of Lee Kuan Yew, and it's not that Museveni is stupid. What has taken over him is that he has wielded his deception to the very extremes at the expense of institutions that would have been so important for him to implement his 7-point program. He assumed so much of his power to undermine whoever was in the way, even if it meant that these decisions were at the detriment of his own promise through the 7-point program. Lee demonstrated flexibility in his policies, adjusting them according to the changing circumstances. That is a very important point. He adapted and he adjusted them according to the changing circumstances. This pragmatism helped Singapore navigate complex global economic and political landscape. I want to look at the social cohesion. Lee worked to bridge the divide between different ethnic and linguistic groups in Singapore, promoting social cohesion and unity. What we are witnessing is Museveni wielding the tool of sectarianism, divisive politics, just like how Paulo Mwanga warned in his quote, his famous quote, that by the time Museveni leaves power, the country will be so divided. We are living in those days, whereby instead of social cohesion, we are in a time period whereby, for example, the Balalo are being chased off the land that was never theirs, and they're claiming ownership of that land in northern Uganda. The Balalo have caused so much turmoil, and this is a very deceptive weapon because there is no tribe called Balalo. Everyone knows where these people come from. So there is this weaponization of different tribes against each other, using land. Land grabbing is skyrocketing. So many people who are not even indigenous in certain areas have taken over square miles of land, dividing us to the point that the country feels like no one really trusts anybody. And that for me is such a recipe for disaster, because you cannot accomplish anything without social cohesion and without strong leadership, because Lee's leadership style, often described as dictatorial but benevolent, allowed him to make tough decisions and drive progress. However, this approach also raises questions about the balance between authority and individual freedoms. Like I said, that this video, I have really gone too long in this video. I really wanted to adjust my style in making videos because I am more of a storyteller than someone who is coming out here to preach anything. So I'll come back with a part 2, how beneficial it would have been if only Museveni was honest when it comes to overstaying in power. I will talk about counting the cost of all these elections that we are having, from human life to resources that are being pumped into the elections, and how monetization has taken over our civic duty, and of course the brute force that is constantly utilized just so Museveni can retain power. By the way, we made 100 subscribers before I took these haters. And I'm just here to remind you, like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this style of video. I'm more of a conversationist, and I hope that in this video I've achieved this step towards improving these videos for you guys. Remember, being in proximity to power, especially you apologists, does not really guarantee that you can wield that power. This country is for every one of us. Cheers, bye.